And obviously, guys, the big news of the day as Bitcoiners is Ross Ulbricht. He was freed yesterday on 121, which is very cool. And I know the Bitcoiners were very, very happy about that. Obviously, they wanted him freed on the 20th. But like I told you guys, and I think my last video, that it's going to be very, very difficult for Trump to do all that stuff in one day. He had a lot of priorities to do, but he did it within, I believe, 30 hours. Very, very quick, like a day and a half. So very, very happy for Ross to get out. Obviously, this is the big, big news. And like I said, Trump kept his promise. He wrote about this on Truth Social, and he wrote, "I just called the mother of Ross to let her know that in honor of her and the libertarian movement, which supported me so strongly, it was my pleasure to have just signed a full and unconditional pardon of her son." Now, that's key. That's key. A full and unconditional pardon, meaning all his charges are wiped clean. They can't mess with it anymore. That's great for Ross. The scum that worked to convict him were some of the same lunatics who were involved in the modern day weaponization of government against me. He was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Ridiculous. Absolutely. It was ridiculous what they did to him just for opening up a free market. Nobody should have been jailed that long. I think he should be compensated. I think that's the second part of it. To be honest, I'm pretty sure Ross is going to be just fine. As you can see here, he's got a lot of donations so far, and this was as of a few hours ago. I'm pretty sure he's going to be fine, but I do think the government should compensate him, to be completely honest with you, because I think he was wrongly put in prison. And if you look at his story and the things he went through, it was absolutely terrible. I want to watch the video about Ross from John Stossel. Let's take a look.
The FBI shut down Silk Road, the online drug site. They called that a major victory over drug abuse.
Silk Road generated more than $1 billion in illegal business.
The most sophisticated and extensive criminal marketplace on the internet today.
Because people bought drugs on the site anonymously. Silk Road's founder had bragged, the state is unable to get its thieving, murderous mitts on the site. But he slipped up. He accidentally used his real name, Ross Ulbricht, on an internet forum, and the state found him.
The FBI has arrested the reputed mastermind of a popular online black market for drugs.
Then Judge Catherine Forrest said because Silk Road was a black market of unprecedented scope, she would sentence Ulbricht to life in prison with no possibility of parole ever.
He said, "Mom, it's a death sentence. It just takes longer." And he's right. This is for all nonviolent charges.
She and others say it was unfair to lock Ross up forever for a nonviolent crime. But why should we care? Who was Ulbricht anyway? He seemed nice enough.
Pretty sure I want to start a family in the next 5 years.
As a kid, he was a quiet nerd, then an Eagle Scout, excited to go to college. But in college, he became a libertarian. And he wrote, "I want to use economic theory as a means to abolish the use of coercion." Coercion, meaning force. He viewed laws against drugs as coercion, force that stops peaceful people from living the way they want. He was right, but many Americans hate and fear drug use.
You're breaking up the social fabric of our country.
They applauded when the judge announced Ross would be in jail forever.
This is the judge who finally got it right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We all agree here on that?
Concur.
Life in prison without parole?
Yep.
Anybody else, any other wise guys want to do it? That's what you're going to get.
Give me a break. Prison without parole is not going to stop the sale of drugs. We should have learned that from America's attempt at alcohol prohibition. Once you're an adult, if you want to buy intoxicants, it should be your right. Where that's legal, sales are done without violence, and the products sold are safer.
This is your brain on drugs.
Yes, many drugs are dangerous. Some who bought drugs on Silk Road died.
At least 6 people died.
His mother said non-violent guy. No.
Silk Road had some rules, at least, like nothing that harmed or defrauded. No child pornography was allowed.
But now that the government's closed Silk Road, replacing the site with this notice, other illegal sites have opened, and they offer more drugs.
These other sites, I've heard that they're just open season, anything. So they're actually worse and multiple times bigger.
She'd actually never seen them, so we used the web browser Tor to show them to her. It's not like they got rid of these things. Here's another one.
And by the way, Silk Road had 12,000 listings when it was taken down.
The new sites offer more than 100,000.
So I guess they weren't scared by Ross's life sentence, as the judge said.
But law enforcement keeps bragging about successes.
The dark net is not a place to hide.
Here's Attorney General Sessions announcing that they'd shut down another website.
We will use every tool we have to stop criminals from exploiting vulnerable people.
But the shutdowns hardly make a difference. New sites appear.
Critics will say, as we shutter one site, another site emerges. And they may be right. But that is the nature of criminal work. It never goes away.
Never, ever. Heroin, heroin. So they didn't stop anything.
No, there was a spike after the sentence was given. It had the opposite effect. It's a travesty what's going on.
Still, I find it hard to support her son since he was also accused of trying to kill people.
A murder for hire plot.
Trying to hire a hitman.
It's completely digital evidence and hearsay, basically, by the government.
Ulbricht suspects an undercover cop planted those messages.
A mortgage company will not take a screenshot of a bank statement because they know how easily faked it is.
No one was actually killed, and the government didn't charge Ulbricht with murder for hire in his trial.
But let's just say, for argument's sake, that everything is true. The typical sentence for murder for hire when there's no murder, because there were no murders, to be clear, is 10 years. Double life plus 40 years without parole for a young guy who, was a zealot. He was a libertarian. He believed in free markets and voluntarism. He is not a dangerous person.
No American is safer because Ross Ulbricht is in jail for life. He's just one more casualty of our drug war. Drug dealers shoot each other, shoot bystanders, and corrupt whole neighborhoods.
Police, search warrant!
The police risk their lives and sometimes kill innocent people. Locking up Ulbricht won't make anything better. The drug war does much more harm than any drug.
Yeah, I thought I'd show you that piece. That was really, really, really well done. And thank God he's out of prison, man. And that was just nothing but nonsense. It was BS. You guys saw it, man. It just made me even angry watching that. But again, I'm watching it from a point of he's free now. Thank God he is. God bless him. God bless his family, man. Really. Let's check this little short video out real quick.
Free at last, free at last. After 11 years behind bars, Ross Ulbricht is finally free. Why does this matter? Because it's one of the most glaring miscarriages of justice in modern history. Ross was handed 2 life sentences plus 40 years for the nonviolent crime of creating an online marketplace. Ross was a hardcore libertarian, and he had the idea of creating a marketplace where people can interact without the systemic use of force, aka the government. With Bitcoin, Ross showed that it was possible to bypass government-controlled payment rails, showing the unstoppable nature of Bitcoin. The government didn't like that too much and imprisoned him, but his case was riddled with corruption, such as these 2 federal agents that were caught embezzling Bitcoin from the Silk Road during the investigation itself. Then we have an unproven murder for hire plot that the judge used against him in sentencing. The judge herself suggested that because of Ross's privilege, she was giving him a much harsher sentence than she would give to a drug dealer from the Bronx. Congressman Thomas Massie has argued that Ross's sentence was a violation of the 8th Amendment, filing it under cruel and unusual punishment, saying the government made an example of Ross because they didn't want people using Bitcoin. During the 2024 campaign, Trump made a deal with the libertarian leadership. If he got elected, he would commute Ross's sentence on day 1. Yesterday, he kept that promise, and Ross is a free man. Bitcoiners around the world are celebrating for Ross, his family, and the idea that maybe we do have an ally in the White House.
Love it. Absolutely love it. It's a long time coming. He deserves it, and he shouldn't have been there in the first place, in my personal opinion. We also have a photo here of Thomas Massie saying, great being on IRL. I think it was Timcast IRL with you last night with the redhead libertarian. I don't know if you know who she is, but I would definitely follow her. She's a very, very nice woman, and she has very, very good ideas. So glad to see Ross is finally free. And again, Thomas Massie is an absolute incredible congressman. If you haven't seen his story or his videos and you don't know anything about Thomas Massie and you don't know his story, please check him out. I think he's the most based congressman, maybe based politician on the planet. I'm not even talking about America, on the planet. Check this video right here. He talks about Ross in this one.
A letter that Ross wrote me on December 14th of this year. And his mom, Lynn, gave this to me. And I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this because it's personal, but it brought a tear to my eye. Mr. Massie, Inauguration Day fast approaches, and my hopes are running high that our new president will quickly put an end to my incarceration once he is sworn in. As I await the beginning of my new life in freedom, I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for your part in bringing about this wonderful outcome. You have consistently been a powerful voice in the public sphere, supporting my campaign for freedom. So my imminent release is as much a victory for you as it is for me and my family. Thank you for every single time you supported me, both publicly and in private. You put your faith and confidence in me And now that I'm getting my second chance, I promise to make you proud that you did. I would love to connect with you once I am on the other side of these walls to see how I can help further the cause of freedom. So he's already thinking about what he can do. I know Josie's crying. I cried when I read this. I've read it twice, practiced it without. This is the first time I've been able to read it without crying. Because this is, like you were saying, Tim, this is a personal example of how an election matters, down to somebody who was going to rot in prison, was rotting in prison. And by the way, Ross, he didn't even, he was willing to settle for less than what Trump gave him. He was willing to settle to have a sentence commuted, which means you're basically guilty, an admission of guilt, but your sentence is over. You've served enough time. And it was a ridiculous over sentencing, regardless of the guilt or not. I think it's a violation of the Eighth Amendment. Eighth Amendment to our Constitution says no cruel or unusual punishment. Why should you get 2 life sentences plus 40 years?
Well, explain what he's accused. What was he accused of doing?
Running a website that allowed people to buy and sell drugs, for instance, using Bitcoin. I think they made an example out of him because they didn't want people using Bitcoin. And now it's far more mainstream, but I think that's one of the reasons they did it.
But I think we should clarify, I guess. The website allowed people to buy and trade. What people did with it after the fact was what the people did with it.
Well, MasterCard lets you pay for prostitutes, right?
Exactly. And thank God that stuff is over with, man. Again, we don't have to say free Ross anymore, and hopefully that would never happen again. I don't think it will. But this is why I tell people politics are important. Politics are Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is politics. We got to know and understand who our local politicians are, mayors, and then who's our governors, who's our House of Representatives, who's our senators, and who the president is. And it's important. And again, I know a lot of you guys don't like Trump and all this other stuff, but again, if you don't like him, you got to respect him for what he did for Ross.